Things might get weird.
Yeah.
Welcome to our life.
Really, but oh, we're recording now.
Yeah, that's on the dry side too. So it's like,
Yeah.
I'm in Southern California right now.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah, exactly.
is also a bomb. I love Southern California.
Yeah.
So
there's
I
worse
wouldn't be
places
mad
to go.
about a beach anywhere.
Right?
I'll be in a conference
sun.
room for like 3 full days staring out at the most pretty beach.
And you can't go.
Yeah.
Can't
It's
touch
just what it
How
is.
pretty it is out there.
Back on a mission.
Thursday, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Saturday I'll have all day before our flight leaves that night to go do whatever I want. And then Thursday, Friday mornings, I think my day starts a little bit later, so
Okay.
that'll be nice. But
Yeah.
yeah, this will be released right the week after I get back, I think.
Yeah.
Wait. Yeah, or like
Perfect.
We really did it
gone
last
home,
time.
Gone
We got
home,
2
gone home,
out of that.
gone. Then we don't have anything, and then we need a budget after that.
That's
When it's
crazy.
all done, then we'll budget.
That's
yeah,
crazy.
it's crazy, dude.
Jeez.
When do you
Yeah.
do Lake Powell?
End of the month, like
Same
the
time
last
as
week.
us.
Okay, same as
Yeah.
us.
What day do you guys
they
get down
get-
there?
We get down there on the first.
On the first. Okay.
No, we get down there the day before the 1st. 30th?
Oh yeah,
How many
it's
days
Monday
is
through
it?
Saturday. So
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I think the 30th is Friday or Saturday. Can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We leave
Something like
Sunday,
that.
get home Friday.
Okay, we're
So,
Monday,
yeah.
Monday, Saturday,
Got it.
same time.
Cool.
It's going to be so fun.
Exciting. Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
so
You'll love it.
excited. No, I love Lake Powell.
You'll have a blast.
I just worry a little bit.
The houseboat.
Fine. Yeah.
But everybody has a life jacket, so like
Just
that's
houseboat
all
on
we
the
need
slip.
to know,
You don't
right?
even have to leave the slip.
I know.
Yeah. There you go.
Some people do that.
Just stay right there on the
Honestly,
dock.
Yeah, they literally just stay in the slip, and
Oh,
then,
and then
they just take
they
their
go out with their
speedboats
boat
out.
for
Oh, there
play,
you go.
but they sleep in the slip.
Okay.
Then they don't have to worry about anchoring and wind and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because anchoring's kind of the
It's a thing.
trickiest
I
part.
would never do that, but some people do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's more
maybe
bags.
We'll get out on the
maybe
lake.
I
Yeah.
can like talk my cousin into just like helping us go anchor in. That's like
We'll be fine.
okay.
Worst case, we'll have stories for the podcast. We need content. Here we go.
Content.
I knew a realtor that there's a guy that got kind of famous. He has a big whole thing now, but they sunk a houseboat, and he said everybody filmed this as it was like sinking.
What?
And he made it on the news. I sat in a class that he taught once, and he said, "I'll do your interview on the news, but you have to refer to me as the real estate professional so and so." So that's what they would refer to him as. He was a realtor and just used it as a
Oh,
marketing
so-
campaign.
No.
Yeah,
I mean,
Oh
if
my
you've got a
And I
sinking
actually, like-
ship, might
Yeah.
as well make some.
make some good
Something
content
out of
out of
it?
it. So
That's
it's
funny.
kind of funny, but yeah,
Oh, how funny.
yeah,
We
Oh, okay.
yeah,
I know who you're talking
you know
about.
how we're talking.
Yeah.
About.
yeah. You can
We've
Google
talked
it.
about him before.
Yeah, we definitely have.
Yeah, but yeah, good times.
Wow, that's
We're here
crazy.
to get in the. Man, I went down some. That link you sent me.
Which
I had
one?
to like.
I sent you a couple.
Yeah.
The Linen
Linen Railroad.
Railroad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Nathan
was.
Reynolds.
Yep.
So we.
Yeah, so I hate that story.
Oh
Yeah,
with
I
a
actually-
passion. I
Hate
it.
only
Okay, yeah, I'm
I
like, you would
only
hate it.
listened to like what 10 minutes max because we just drove to Spanish Fork, but we talked in between it. So like
Okay.
what I actually took in, awful, awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
But I
you
have
had
family. I have a family member who was raised with someone like that.
Like his grandpa.
Yes. So I actually, part of me is like, this guy's a bit eccentric and this is all a little crazy and woo woo. But then there's other parts of it. I'm like, oh yeah, I know that. I know personally that
That
happens.
stuff happens.
And then not just that, but I have a good friend who has a relative that married into the family that also has experience in that stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's something I've known about for 10 or 15 years or so,
Yep.
at least. And
Yep. Same
and
here.
it gets dark. Yeah.
I just have never heard the detail that he goes into.
Yeah.
He goes
Oh,
into
yeah.
some pretty unfortunate detail
Yep.
about how it operates and what
Good
it's
word
for.
it. Unfortunately.
There are sides of it that are for sure just consuming it on people's lusts, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's another side of it too,
Yeah.
and it is for very specific reasons. It's like one of the questions I'd ask myself is there've always been a history of child sacrifice
Yeah.
throughout history. In every major civilization, you read about child sacrifice. and according to him, this is why.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah, I think you have to kind of sum it up. We won't go in there. Don't worry. We're gonna
Thanks.
transition over. We're gonna transition over. Although it would be a freaking crazy interesting episode.
Y'all could do that together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do
Maybe I
something
invite
different.
my
Honestly,
that family
anything
member.
else. Let's
which
go
could
do
get interesting.
anything else.
The I kind of the way I look at it is that you have what we're going to talk about today. You have energy, and it can be used for good or for bad, right?
yeah.
Absolutely.
And so you have there's kind of like a I don't know. I'm trying not to go down the road too far. Sorry.
Thanks.
But you have religion, and then you have people that use religion to do bad things.
Sure.
So the whole ritual abuse thing that he talks about is, I think it doesn't just, he actually kind of said it in that video, but with the family that I have that has experience in it, they were a part of the Mormon church, but he told me, he's like, they infiltrate all the churches, all religion, they're in everything, and then they use their signs or tokens or whatever to do the opposite of what the people are trying to do. And then I have experiences on my mission where I heard stories directly from people, and a companion of mine that talks about some of the stuff that he got into that I still can't really wrap my head around, but we can talk about it after.
That's
It's
why I
interesting.
sent them over to you, because you had sent over the video of that lady doing all of the questions.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Dowsing rods.
Dowsing rods.
Right.
We have dowsing rods today, folks, and crystals and rocks.
Yeah, all that fun stuff, and it's an unknown world,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you can get answers to anything if you want to. It's just a matter of where is it coming from.
Yeah.
And I've researched dowsing and other sort of mediums for a long time just to learn about it, just to be aware of it. And the thing that kept coming to mind as I would research it and study it and listen to people and then follow up on stuff, and Nathan actually talks about it in one of his podcasts, but he talks about the reality of what Isaiah called familiar spirits. And instead of seeking unto the living God, they seek unto wizards and familiar spirits that peep and mutter. And he was like, that this is not just weird woo-woo stuff. This is very real for these people, and these entities and these beings and these creatures are very real from his perspective.
Yeah.
Even in was it Book of Kings? I can't remember. Anyway, but the Witch of Endor raises Samuel's ghost. It's like there's some real stuff going on that unfortunately is usually just the dark side,
Yeah.
right? We don't have a lot of history of powers on the other side. It's just a lot of dark stuff, which I don't know, just musing on it right now seems to be the case if the pattern by which God works on this planet gives people chances and then wipes them out, right? So what remains is the devastation of wicked civilizations,
Yeah.
right? All the light has been snuffed out long before that.
Yeah.
So what remains is all the dark stuff.
Yeah.
We don't get records of the light stuff because that was long before the destruction, pulled out and pulled away and buried in hills and mountains and stuff, and we don't have that information.
Yeah.
So
Man.
at least not yet.
Yeah.
But-
So tell us about. So I first actually came. I think the dowsing rod thing. I think I first was introduced to that when I was studying, when I was kind of going through my faith
Okay.
transition.
Sure.
Yeah.
As Jess refers to it.
Yeah.
It sounds nicer.
I think I mainly like it because it doesn't sound as scary to other people too,
Yeah.
right? It's one of those things where you realize that words matter when dealing with certain situations. And so if I'm talking to a family that is worried about it,
All
then
right, know
it's
your audience.
Yeah.
it's safer.
But I think too, I think I may have heard of it when I was doing landscaping just before my mission, just out of high school.
Yeah.
Because my uncle had told me that his grandpa would use are they witching sticks?
Divining rods, witching sticks, yeah, it's all the same
To-
thing.
Yeah, to find water.
Cherry wood was usually what people used to
Okay.
find water
Interesting.
with sticks, and it was a wire rod.
Yeah.
You would hold it up, and it pops down when you walk over water.
Yeah. So, and then I've brought it up to like other friends, and they're like, "Oh yeah, my dad would use that to find water,"
Yeah,
or
my grandpa.
your grandpa would.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is. If you Google it, it is actually something that people have used. And how do they? Is it energy, or how does it actually find?
So the guy
water?
that I learned from and studied, his name's Leroy Bull. He's still alive. He's emeritus right now, but he was the chairman of the American Society of Dowsers, and he would do courses all over the country and teach people about it, and he'd have skeptics come in and other people come in and whatever. But he's done over 1,500 dowsing projects around the world for corporations.
Really?
Yeah, they call him out to help them know where to drill for oil, how deep to drill, how much will come out, how far down they need to go to get the proper volumes that they want to get, and he's right.
Really?
And he's able to do that with these rods.
Yeah, he uses the rods, some similar
Like
to this.
these.
Yeah.
Pull them out. So I bought these on Amazon. They're like $20. I haven't really used them.
Some
But
people would
these
just
are-
get
Divining
hangers.
rods?
Just get hangers and bend them. Right? There's nothing special about it. Just like using a piece of wood, right? You get some cherry wood that's you got your two branches that connect, and it creates a Y. And they just hold it like this, pointing up. So there's nothing special about it.
Yeah.
But how would they, because these ones have
Swivels on them.
the swivel.
Yeah.
So you hold the part that's not connected to your wire,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And then it'll just move in and out and do its thing.
Yeah.
But how are they doing it with like a stick that it would move?
So one interesting story related to that is I was watching an example. This guy was called out to a well site in Texas. This guy wanted to drill for water. And so he's holding the Y rod. It's just a piece of wood, right? Pointed up. And he would just walk up and down the pasture, and it would just pop. But his hands never move.
Yeah.
Right? So he's holding a stick, and the stick drops down. So he had the guy's daughter come and hold one end of the stick, and he's like, hold it. Don't let it move, right? So they walk down the pasture, and the pointed part of the stick tries to bend down, but she's holding it, so it's like cracking because the stick wants to go down, and she's holding it.
So she's holding tight. Even.
She's holding tight, right?
Okay.
Don't move, and the stick goes, and it's still trying to bend, and you can hear the stick cracking and stuff. So he's going, it's not me. This is not me moving. She is holding this to prevent it from spinning down, and it spins down. So
Crazy.
It's wild. I don't know how it works. They don't work for me. And what's interesting about this Leroy Bull guy is he'll talk about how, just like anything else, there's people who have innate gifts and they can feel the energies and they can separate themselves from the subtle energies that are around them and connect with them. And he'll talk about how it works for some people and doesn't work for others, although you can learn it. You can learn how to quiet your mind, quiet your energy, and allow it to attune in. He talks about entrainment. I don't know if you researched remote viewing much.
Just a little bit.
Okay, so similar stuff related to remote viewing as with dowsing rods, and one of the main principles is entrainment, and entrainment is fixating on a target. So with remote viewing, whether you're doing the Stargate program with the military or if you're just doing it yourself, the idea is you have to entrain your mind on whatever the target is. What are you trying to obtain information for? So then you train your mind to that thing, and with dowsing rods, you would just entrain your mind to the tips of the dowsing rods, and then, like if you're trying to find something, right? Okay, where is water? And you train on where that water would be to the tips of the dowsing rods, and you just walk, and they do the rest, or the stick does the rest, or whatever. So he teaches a lot of different methods of how to find stuff. He has thousands of stories that are just really fascinating. And so yeah, had a call come in on a Saturday morning. It was a couple. Their son had been missing for 2 weeks. He was a teenage boy, and he had gone to school. They had records of him checking into school, but he had like a pack on him. Checked into school and then was gone. He was no longer at school, and he was gone for 2 weeks. And they couldn't, for the whole like National Guards out there, the local police forces, the community, they're all volunteering out there trying to find him. And it's been 2 weeks, so the parents call him frantically, can you find our son? Can you use your talents to find our son? And he said, well, what's his name and where roughly do you figure he is? So he just pulled up a map of Washington and just gridded it, right? put it into 4 squares and just ask, is he in grid 1? No. Is he in grid 2? No. And the rods would, do yes or no, right? And narrowed it down. And then he got to a place where he said, well, is he okay? Does he want to be found? And all of those types of questions. He was okay. He had food. He had water. He was safe. He had shelter. There was nothing wrong. And he said, can I find out when he will come from the mountains? Found out when he's going to come from the mountains, isolated the spot. And he told the parents, he said, he's going to come out of the mountains, out of this Forest Service road at 5:30 on this Saturday. So be there. So they're there, and it's like the whole military is there too, right? There's helicopters are there, police, whatever, they're all there. And he comes walking down the road with his backpack just fine.
Really?
And he's how old?
16, 17.
Okay.
Just decided to go on a backpack trip by himself.
Oh, gosh.
But it was the right time. It was the right place. And all this guy did was consult the map. He calls it map dowsing.
Yeah.
So you just grid the whole thing, and you can find anything.
Huh.
However, there are caveats to it, which are there are, I'm going to call them rules, but I don't know if that's the right word for it. But it's just that you always have to ask permission, and you have to find out if it's the right time and if it's the right, if it's appropriate to do this. And so, for example, with this boy, he was like, is it appropriate for me to ask to find out if he's okay? The rods do their thing. So there's all those things connected to it as well, in making sure that what you're doing is not crossing some of those boundaries into some of the other energies, I guess.
Yeah, it's crazy. We found this lady. Did we find it first and then we asked him about it?
Which one?
The lady that was on Instagram that does these.
No, we were kind of talking about it last week about doing this episode, and then she pops up on my Instagram reels all the time, asking
I know,
questions.
but I'm saying when you first got your dowsing rods.
Oh, I bought those because I saw her using them, yeah.
Okay.
Is that what you're
So,
asking?
so on her thing, she'll just take people's questions, and then she just asks the rods the questions, and then they either go in for yes, I think, and then out for no.
Right.
And so he got them, and I was like, I thought immediately, I'm like, well, energy. Yeah, the energy you put in. So I just took him, and I was like, yes, 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 yes. No, 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 no. And then they just like did the yes and no. But it's interesting for you to say, okay, so then anyway, there's obviously more to it.
Worked?
Yeah,
So here's.
try it. Let's try it.
Oh dear.
Do you want to do it?
No, go ahead. I don't know.
So I don't even, that's literally all I've ever
Get
done.
on the YouTubes, folks.
So
Get on the YouTube.
Just like,
You can't hold. There you go.
try not to hold them.
See, they're moving around.
know.
So
Then I said,
this
yes,
all
yes,
seems
yes,
a little
yes,
bit
yes,
like
yes,
Kyle
yes,
said he
yes,
couldn't
yes,
get him to
yes,
work.
yes, yes, yes.
Whoa,
Then
what
go,
the heck?
No, 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 no. There they go.
Okay, let's try something real fast.
Okay, go.
Okay, no.
Did
hold
she
on
move her
there.
hands? Did she move her hands?
No, I was watching her hands.
Okay.
Don't you trust her?
Well, I try.
I try.
I'm not a skeptic at all, am I?
Of course not.
There you go.
So, without saying anything, okay, let me back up. We don't want to do that. So when you're saying yes, are you saying it to the rods, or are you just saying it, like, are you just putting it out there?
Just barely, probably just putting it out there. Before I was trying to be like very intentional. So I don't know.
Okay. So ask the question, am I moving these rods, or is someone else?
Well, but you can't ask an open-ended question like that.
So, yeah,
you have to
someone
ask
it
else.
has to be
Yes,
yes
two
or a no
questions. Is
question.
someone else moving these rods?
Okay, so is someone else moving these rods?
It's all
So it's
her,
going
baby.
up or out, which means no,
That means
right?
no.
Well, it's really going out.
So,
So
So that means she's doing it.
No,
No.
it just doesn't mean that there's something else present.
oh, I see.
that's nice to know.
Potentially.
We did it. We were very intentional about
So-
getting other presents out of here.
Here's why I asked the question.
We were. Thanks everybody for that came to that. Kim came.
We're like, hey, then listen. We're just gonna try something.
It's
If it
gonna
works,
be
great. If it
kind of
doesn't,
weird.
We're fine.
We staged our home. It was great. It worked. It seemed to work.
So here's why I suggested we do that. Cursory review of science. Okay, so the Enlightenment did a lot of wonderful things for our world, especially in the Western civilization, right? The Age of Reason said man can find out his own salvation. He can find out his own purpose and his own existence by thinking, right? Rene Descartes, I think, therefore I am. It's like the whole sum of it, right? And well, some other stuff. You have Newton and the whole scientific revolution that came along that said by reasoning and by thinking and by hypothesizing, we can work out how the world works and how we work. And it became very mechanistic, very mechanic, right? So cause and effect. You have this reaction creates an opposite and equal. This action creates an opposite and equal reaction, right? The benefits of that thinking we see all around us every day, all the time, right? The challenge with it is it eliminated anything that cannot be tested by the means we have created to test things. Does that make sense? So because we have this reaction happening, there are no tools to measure why that's happening.
Yeah.
There's no equipment like this that can say, well, here's what's going on, and we can measure this.
Right.
Because we can measure it, now we can test it. And that's the sum of the whole scientific revolution of the Enlightenment is measure it. Let's measure this. And if we can measure it, then we can quantify it. And in quantifying things, we can then say, well, here's what's going to happen. We can start predict stuff, right? And it eliminated this whole other world of the subtle energies. And I think I've told you before, or maybe both of you, I think it was at dinner last time we were out, but there are old documents of people diagramming the chakras in France and in Germany. There are people that see them, right? They can see the energies in people, and they're drawing it, writing about it. This is what this looks like. This is what this looks like. Oh, when this person's angry, this is what this looks like, right? And a lot of those people got killed because they were talking about things that could not be measured, that could not be tested, and they were able to actually do things as well that defied our reason. And there's a long, dark history of that. So moving forward, we then have to ask the question, okay, well, is E equals MC squared true? Is that a reality, right? Can energy and matter interchange? Are they virtually the same thing? And anecdotally, what's funny about that is that Einstein, when he's talking about that, he woke up with that equation like burned onto his eyelids. He dreamt it, similar to how Tesla came up with a lot of his stuff. It would just show up in his brain. And he would just draw it and write it out, and it was just there.
We're talking Nikola Tesla, right? Yeah. Got it this time. Good job.
Not the company.
Yeah.
Hopefully the company's not thinking.
Yeah.
We may get there one day.
Valid.
We're getting close.
But if that's true, then we all actually live in a primordial soup that is not necessarily testable by equipment that we can create. Right? That's always the limitation. Let's create some equipment and then test it.
Yeah.
We don't even know what we're supposed to be testing for. We're just creating equipment based on other people's experiments that we can then try to test for, right? This is what CERN is, right? They just spin electrons around that thing as fast as they can and slam them into each other, and let's see what happens. Let's see what comes out, right? So it's great from a discovery standpoint, but it still doesn't allow us to actually look at the world as it is, not necessarily as what's happening because we're doing things to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this whole world of subtle energy was put on a huge back burner, tabled, shelved, locked in a box in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of people have, like with you. So I can't do that. When I try the dowsing rods, they don't work for me.
Ask him a question.
I've tried many times. So it'd be funny if it
Those
worked.
things move
That'd be
pretty
so
easy.
awesome.
That's what.
It's like, nope.
So you balance them. You get a balance to them. You find their stability.
That looks stable.
Yep. And there's a lot of ways to use dowsing rods. Did you watch the videos of Marcel Vogel?
I haven't. I
the ones that
have
you
not
sent
seen
way
those
before,
yet.
right?
I sent
Just the one this week.
Yeah,
you sent us a couple.
more.
Oh.
I haven't seen those ones yet, but
I'll get into that in a second. So I'll just do what you did.
Okay.
Yes, 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 yes.
I have so many powers. I'm so powerful.
You're a dowser in the family.
No. I could tip my hands up and
Yeah,
do stuff.
yeah.
But I've never, and I've tried a lot of times. You do it. I'm curious to see you do it. So she has some innate abilities and things that I don't.
I've never tried them before.
So use your thumbs to bounce them on the top, just to lock them in place, and then get your finger out of the way. Yeah, there you go. Okay, and then when you're ready,
My thumbs
no, when you're ready, let them go.
Oh, shit.
So I sent those videos to a friend. Well,
Yeah, let her do it.
Yes, 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 yes.
Oh my god.
Yes. No. That one went. No.
So a simple demonstration like that, there are things that people can do that the scientific model of the way our world works does not account for and cannot account for. And as soon as it cannot account for it, it is labeled as not something that can be valid, right? Because it literally is. It's unvalidatable. You cannot prove it but it's only with our limited mindset of what we can actually reason out, right? We're pretty smart now.
yeah.
But a lot of people are coming to this idea that, like people like David Bohm and others talking about entanglement, like quantum entanglement, right? It's everywhere all the time, everything at once. We live in this soup of energy, and anything on the periodic table has this underlying vibration or frequency. And he talks about entrainment with this too, right? If you can entrain your mind to that frequency, to whatever it is you are seeking to obtain, then using these tools, you can find them. They just attune to it.
Yeah.
So you're going to say something with the rods. I can't remember. Anyway.
It came with like rose quartz.
Oh, did it?
On the thing.
Oh, a pendulum.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so it immediately made me
think you
think of
showed me that.
Remember. It's right here.
I didn't know that it came with it. I was out of town when it came.
Really?
And so she and the kids pulled it out and were playing around with it, sending me videos and stuff. But
And you were like, yeah, right. You guys are making it up.
yeah, I was. I was like, wait, did he move his hand there?
hand.
Because they do move pretty easily, but
They do, yeah.
But it is like when I talk to people that have, before I even got these or knew that I could just get these on Amazon, I talk to people like, oh yeah, no, that's how my dad or my grandpa would find water, and we'd dig down and find it for whatever reason. And
Well, okay, so then
it's definitely like a part of our history, which sounds crazy. And they've used it all over the world. It's not just America. Or I knew
Every
a guy from
culture.
South Africa that moved here, and he said, "Oh yeah, they use dowsing rods and things there too."
It's very common.
Yeah.
And major corporations around the world, like I said, trust it.
Yeah,
They don't trust the radars. They trust
Which
this.
is wild.
yeah, it is wild.
So it came with this, and it reminded me, like when we were younger, how I don't know if you ever did this, but would you take thread?
This is how you
even
test to see if you're having a boy or a
That's
girl.
what
Yes,
I was thinking
yes,
of,
and so
yes.
you would do, but you have to, like, there were so many different rules, and you can't touch people, and I'm like, oh,
like the
energy.
wives' tales
and
come
then
in
you
on this
like
huge.
1, 2,
Yeah.
3, and then you put it over, and it says boy or girl. Like in a circle, it would be a boy or girl. No,
I can't
circle's a
remember
girl,
which is which.
and then back and forth a boy, and then you would go over, and you'd keep doing it. I've never done it to myself because normally it said that you have to. Oh,
So
see,
the
there's-
dowsing
So then there
rules
would be Jack.
say you can't hold it.
I know that's what I was.
You got it. It's on a stick usually.
Yeah. Oh. Okay.
With
So
the
it's not- it's
pendulum?
not- yeah.
Usually with the
See,
pendulum,
and
you're
then it-
holding it like this.
Not for I'm talking about dowsing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. You have it on a stick that's not connected to your body.
Oh.
And then you can do the same thing as you do with the dowsing rods, right?
Yeah.
You just which ways yes, which ways yes, which ways no.
Yeah.
And you just start asking
And figure
questions.
it out. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what. So then it was like that. I'm like, oh, it reminds me of doing this, and so it was like, oh, okay, so that was my first like real intro to our bodies have this energy that
Yeah.
What's funny
feeds
about
and
those
stuff.
is it doesn't have to be anything special. You can use a tennis ball.
Yeah, so we would
Tennis
we would
ball and a
use
string.
a needle and a thread, or we would put a thread with like
Just to have
like
some
my
weight
my
on the
grandma's
bottom for it to
wedding
spin.
ring or
I
something,
know. I feel
right?
like we
Rings
used
were common.
rings. Yeah.
Yeah, because and it was said that because that's like been touching your body for so long. It's got your energy, you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like
okay.
all of that.
Yeah.
But that's what I was thinking. I'm like, oh, that's interesting because, you know, this kind of seems woo-woo to me, right? Because we've never been
You
introduced
just
to
made
it
it
at all.
work like a magical.
I know, because I'm freaking magic.
sorceress over here.
I don't even know my own abilities.
Yeah, you freaking
Just
Just
proved
kidding.
it.
sorcerer.
No, but I'm like, oh, they're kind of fun to play with, but really to me, it shows me is that like, yeah, things have energy. We all have this energy and things are adaptable with our energy.
Well, it's funny because I sent. Yes, it does. Thank you. Did I cut you off? No. I would like to speak now.
Give him the
Please
call.
freaking raise your
Yeah.
hand.
So I sent the videos of that. I should have it ready to share. But there's a lady on Instagram that does them, and she just asks questions, and people send her the questions to ask, and then she'll ask, "Is this going to be the president? Is this going to be
Oh
whatever?"
yeah, she
you
did.
know, things like that.
She was wrong. She was wrong.
Right. One thing.
Well, they
Right?
haven't had the elections yet. There's been a
Yeah,
couple
but I
things.
thought she said it was Biden, and then he dipped out.
Well, one of the times she asked, and it kind of like got stuck.
Oh,
But I don't remember if that was the exact question. Then
because
yes,
I thought
it
she
did
had
say
to come
him,
back and
or-
retract. I thought I remember
Yeah,
her
I
doing
think there's
that.
been things like that. So I sent it to a friend of mine who was like, "Dude, none of that is real. These people are crazy, blah blah blah." But that same friend has told me that his wife is a bit of an empath,
Okay.
and he and I both have a mutual friend whose dad. I'm trying not to out people here, but his dad was a state president for years, super LDS, super good guy, and so our mutual
yeah.
friend's mom. So but this friend that said that's all fake, who has the empath wife, told me that our mutual friend's mom and dad, the dad
Mom's-
went like on. He
Mom's
would go.
empathic.
The mom's a little bit of it. So now, yeah, our friend. Now we're talking about our friend and his mom and dad. Well, the dad would go trail running and like all the time would go up and do these trail runs up in the mountains and then come back home. And she just had this thought of like, I need to go pick. I almost said his name. I need to go pick him up, and she just like drove up the canyon and ended up right where he was at, and he needed a ride. Like he wasn't doing well. He was like mid run and was just like, "I'm glad you showed up. Thanks for coming to grab me."
Yeah.
And drove up the canyon and just knew there was no way to call him. The cell service didn't work, and she just drove up, grabbed him, and came home. And so I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So that for him to believe in that, but it's the way I think about this too is like when you're sitting in a room and you look over and someone's looking at you,
Staring at
like
you.
how do you know that that's even happening?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think that's something that everybody can relate with.
Well, and I like the example when you walk in a room and you know that there's something happening, like someone's fighting, there's something, and you walk in and you can feel it. It's like you can feel without even knowing anything. You walk in and it's like, oh, what happened?
Yeah.
And it's just a feeling. You haven't seen anything. You haven't experienced anything. You just walk in and you can feel that collective energy.
Yeah. I think you may be more sensitive to that than me.
Well, but I thought,
You don't
is this,
feel that?
But I do sometimes, yeah. There have been times when I've thought that, but I'm definitely not as good at it as you are, or
Oh,
as a
interesting.
lot of people
I thought
are.
that
Picking
was
up the vibe.
super universal, but maybe
don't
not
know.
as much.
well, I mean, I guess like, you know, when you walk into a room and everybody stops talking, like that's pretty evident that something's going on, right?
Yeah.
You catch that.
Yeah, yeah.
But when it's just like,
And there have been times that I'm like, yeah, it
Morale's
feels.
down.
I've been somewhere and just thought this feels off here, but I'm definitely more or less likely to probably feel it as much as you do. And not to out you, I don't want to get it.
Oh,
but
no,
I
okay.
remember you. I thought we talked about it on here, but if
Yeah. I
not,
think we
like when
did,
you
yeah.
were that you're a bit of an empath. That you would go to when you guys were dating, you'd be in church and you could feel Kyle was there even without seeing him.
Yeah.
you could tell like where he would be.
Yeah. But on that, so do you, there's so many questions I think I have around that. But like, I guess like, what does it mean for you for someone that is maybe more sensitive to that type of energy? What is that? Is that all it is, being an empath, or how would you describe it to somebody?
I haven't researched a lot of what people would define as an empath. Like I know I know generally, and so I think there's probably a wide range
Yeah.
of different people who are experiencing different things. I definitely feel a lot. That's like probably my main sense would be feeling. So that's why when I walk in a room, I'm immediately feeling how different people are feeling, and generally, and like watching groups, it's paying attention to it's their energy and the way that they're feeling.
Yeah.
So it makes it harder sometimes for communicating because I'm like, it's the feeling. It's not.
Yeah.
I can't give you all of the details. It's just, this is how it feels.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I'll be like, hey, you need to check on your brother or whoever is like, he doesn't feel very good.
Really?
I'm like, literally. And he'd be like down, not close to me, but I'm like, you got to check on him. There's something off.
Yeah.
So.
And you recognize that.
Yeah.
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 I think you have a better way of describing it too. Like last week when we were talking about, you said empty heaviness or this heavy emptiness. Mixie, I'm not that good. But as soon as you said, I was like,
Words
ding,
are
ding,
hard.
ding. Like that is how I felt. And I couldn't describe how I felt
Yeah.
about it. But
Yeah.
but you nailed it on the head. I'm like, oh my heck. But
It's nice
anyway, I was
sometimes
listening
when
to it
that
today.
happens. It's like, yes, that is exactly
Yeah.
what I
I feel like a little
sure.
kid in a lot of ways that I'm just like learning how to at 40 express my feelings and see how I think about things.
But
good
speaking
times.
of these things, so you guys showed us, Kyle got you a crystal that's on a necklace that you can wear.
Yeah, he brought it.
And oh, you did?
Yeah.
So
And part of that was, so there's been different times in my life where it's affected me more than others, the emotions, the empath types of things. And I'm not entirely sure what it is. I don't know if it's when I'm not doing well, but it'll be harder for me to realize what's mine and what's not mine. So for example, we'd be at a basketball game and all of a sudden it was like, I'd have all these feelings and I was like, why? Like, I'm not experiencing anything. And then suddenly I'd have to stop and like think, oh, okay, yeah, this isn't mine, and try and like, okay, protect, block, shield, whatever, so that it's not being affected by other people. But it took a while to realize it's like, oh, I'm bringing on other people's things, and I'm a mess at sporting events. I'm like, I just put my
lot of
sunglasses on because
emotions.
I just cry, and it's
Oh,
not
really?
negative
Yeah.
emotions, but I'm watching these kids cross finish lines, and it's like my favorite. They're so sweet, and like I can see their parents cheering them on, and that energy exchange between the kid and the parent makes me cry every time.
Really?
stop, I do that.
Do you?
Like performances or anything,
Yes.
and I'm just up there like so proud. And
Yes.
it's not even
Not
my
kid.
child
I know.
sometimes.
All the time. All the time.
Gestures against the opposing team for our children. I'm like,
They do so good. I'm so proud of them.
I'm like, they are not on our team. They
Like,
do not cheer.
They were so good. They're
Yeah, you're,
fourth grade. Come on.
you gotta hate on them still. No, just kidding.
Okay, so you have this necklace, and you probably can't see it here, but it has on one side it's a triangle on the face of it, and the triangle is pointing up, and one side it's pointing down. So explain.
So it's called the Star of David crystal pendant,
Okay.
and it is just like the Star of David. It's two triangles inverted on themselves, cut into the shape of a triangle. So in crystal technology, if you will, the pointed end is the male end, and so I have to say the sharper pointed end is the male end, and then the flatter pointed end is the female end. So if you have a double terminated crystal, the bigger one is the female end, and the more pointier one is the male end.
Okay.
If you don't have a double terminated one, the flat end is the female end. So if you got like an obelisk type crystal, the pointed end is the male end. So female receives, male gives, right? So if she is in a situation where she wants to protect herself, then she will point it so that the female end is touching her chest, because then it's her energy that is going out and she's protecting herself from receiving anything.
Okay.
And then vice versa. If she's in a scenario where she wants to be able to feel people and read people or whatever it is, then she can flip it. And I don't feel this at all. I remember when I got it for her. So I got it, opened it up, was like, oh, this is so cool. And I'm like analyzing it and stuff. She opened it, she was like, oh, she could feel it. Like she felt the rock. I'm like, right, there's no connection. I have no connection to that whatsoever.
Yeah.
But she does. She feels them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, I'll get this one in a second. But knowing how she felt about that, I was like, this is something that'll be really valuable for her, because she tends to take people's energy on, right?
Yeah.
And this is just a way for her to protect herself from it. And she experiences it. She feels it.
Yeah, so I have to be in a place where I can handle it, or like especially going through all the faith transition stuff when I was struggling and trying to figure things out, and it was like, I can't handle other people's stuff right now. So I wore that a lot during that time where it was like, nope. And even sometimes now when I'll go in crowds, it's like, oh, I don't want to today. You know?
Yeah.
Like I just want to do my own thing today. And so I'll wear it, and sometimes I'll wear it underneath, sometimes I'll wear it on top, but just, I do feel a difference when I wear it.
Huh.
So it's like, it's easier to exist when I wear it sometimes.
Yeah.
So for me, I know a lot of people with our backgrounds, right, think crystals are so crazy. But I was sitting there, and when I was going through rough times, I'm like, you know what? Like, first, you think Joseph Smith, like, how did he translate rocks? Okay, people. So I'm like, okay, well,
It is part of
it's not,
history.
yeah.
Right?
So like, it's not too far off there for me at least. I'm like, I can associate that and feel like okay with it. But also, my other thing was I would go, and at first I was just like reading the description of all the different crystals.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, I could use that. I could use that. I could use that. And then it was just, to me, I'm like, it's just going to be set as a reminder of like, okay, let's focus on this right now, you know?
Yeah.
These things that I'm struggling with, I'll focus on that. But I found, for me at least, that when I decided what I needed or wanted, it usually tended to be worse. So like I would choose my crystal to
gotcha.
mainly decide, like, to say, okay, we're focusing on this and we're gonna like work on this today. That I didn't need that. So I said, okay, well, let's pray. So I'd pray. I'd set them all out in front of me. And then I would just open my eyes, and the ones that I was drawn to. Because I still, even today, I cannot name what they look like. And I've used them on and off for a couple of years.
You couldn't name what each stone is?
No.
Oh, okay.
Or their properties. But I'll just, I open my eyes and I'm like, okay, this one feels right. And then by the end of the day, I would read the description, because I still use my flashcards. I'm like,
You chucked the
by
book.
the end,
Went by your feel.
by the end of the day, I was like, there it is. That's why I needed that one, right?
Yep.
So I don't know. I know that a lot of people are like, that's so woo-woo. But I think to me, it comes back to the energy and like it letting God, and for me, and the universe and, his creations, like help me in whatever way he sees fit for me.
I'm actually shocked in being married to her that there is this whole underground hippie energy healer movement
I kind
that
of
happens that we.
I know, she's so great.
But there's a lot of women that are into it.
A lot.
Yeah.
I was shocked, actually. I'm like, wait, you're into this too? We be at a party
But-
at my buddy's house, and some lady's doing like, was it tarot reading cards, and she's like reading us. Do you remember that?
We didn't do that. They did have a tarot reader. But we didn't.
I know that's
end up
kind
doing
of
it.
different. Sorry.
No,
I
were-
was kind of shocked at how many people were there that were like into the same stuff. I guess I should say. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think that it's getting more normalized, especially a lot lately. But I just think it's all in how you take it on, right?
Yep.
Like it can be looked as bad. I don't know. To me, it just was like, okay, that's
Well, I
woo-woo
think you
hippie,
can
but
use it to control your life.
yeah,
or
yeah,
to help.
yeah. Yeah,
Ooh, I like
that's
Same
it.
thing with
Yeah,
like when people are reading the stars and planets, and they're like, well, this.
this,
and so
yeah,
then you're deciding how things are going to
This
be,
is
as
truth.
opposed to being like, oh, I'm feeling that a little bit. That makes sense.
yeah. That's it. You're so good with words.
Yeah, you did it.
You guys win. You guys win. We'll just kind of try and come up with a thought, and then you guys give it the good wordage.
Well,
and we'll
If I can, I know this has been a little bit all over the place, but it's cool. One of the things I wasn't aware of, and I was Googling it even just this morning again and try to like understand it, but how crystals are used in just our technology today. That was one thing that you kind of brought it to earth for me when we were talking that it was probably last month or whenever when we went on that date. I think you were telling us about
Yeah,
it.
that sounds right.
But I didn't realize that like every major tech company that sells hard drives or memory, anything,
Chip manufacturers.
are using crystals in that process. And then when I looked it up, so maybe you can help me clarify this, because it was when I looked it up this morning, it talked about, I was like, how is memory stored on a hard drive? And I think it said something about magnetism and how things move around. And then when I actually used the word crystals, then it said crystals are used. It's my phone's recording this, but as not a cylinder, as a, what's the word? The crystals are you. Maybe help us break that down and help us understand that more on like.
Sure.
Bring it to
You
Earth
just
again
like
for us.
assumed that he knows.
No, he does. He does. He knows. He was the one telling us about it. So I'm curious. So and it sounds like they can actually store memory. There's some things that I saw online that I'm just not sure what to trust or what to really what source has it right, and then a lot of it is in terminology that I just couldn't repeat to you like I'm doing now.
In full clarity or transparency, I don't know the process they use to actually create the chip. I just know that they use crystals in it. And I've known this for a long time. And a fun thing for me was my little brother went to work for Intel.
Oh, okay.
And he worked in the fab. They call it the fab, where they made these wafer chips. I was talking to him about it all the time. I was like, well, how do they do it? He's like, I can't tell you. I literally can't tell you. I have an NDA, and it is detailed about what I cannot talk about, what I cannot say, what I cannot show people, because it's like proprietary information. Right?
Really?
So silica is the base element in quartz crystal. And silica is, so actually before I go there, so silica is in all of our cells. It's in all of the plant cells. It's in all of our cells too, but in minuscule amounts. Crystal, quartz crystal specifically, but crystal in general is what's called piezoelectric. So if you apply mechanical pressure to it, it'll produce electrical force, right? And so people have known this for a long time. Marcel Vogel, the guy who pioneered the cutting of these types of crystals, he was an IBM engineer and was working on radio technology back in the 60s and started to work with crystals more in depth. And he pioneered the crystal technology, was one of the people that pioneered the crystal technology that we use today for all of our communications and technology. And what he found was that crystals could store information, they could transmit information, and they can transmit power. And he has lots of anecdotal stories about what he was doing and testing them, and you can charge them with energy, and then discharge that energy into objects. And this kind of goes back to our original conversation about the dark side of things. There's a long history of objects being charged with energy, right? Charged with some sort of magical power, magical energy, right? Totems and talismans. I have a book that's called Totems, Talismans, and Crystals. It was written in the 1800s. And it was all about the history of these, what he called devices that people would use to imbue themselves with more power or more energy or whatever, right? So he would use crystals, and he would imbue objects with positive energy. He always used positive energy, different things. One of the stories he tells is that he charged it with, he focused on it for a long period of time and filled it with as much love as he possibly could. And then he went back to work because they were working on this together, and he pointed at one of his colleagues, and it knocked him out right on the ground, and was gone. It was out, unconscious for a while. So anyway, there's some really interesting things as far as that goes. As technology expanded, crystals became the source for powering our electrical infrastructure in the world today. So what Intel does is they will grow their own quartz, okay? And that quartz they grow them in all these different places in the fab and stuff, and then they'll cut them into millimeter, like tiny little wafers, and then those wafers go into chips, and they hook all the different stuff to it and program it that way. So that's the extent of my knowledge of how they make the chips. I just know that they use crystal. They use quartz crystal in the chips that power our technology. So
this so my iPhone's recording this right now, but the Google had my search saved on my iPad. So this is what I read this morning. Quartz crystals are used in oscillator circuits to create a precise frequency for electronic systems to function properly. So this is on Google. This ensures that electronic devices can operate in sync and transmit data accurately. And
so hold on a second.
Yeah.
You just read that crystals transmit data.
Yeah.
But that escapes people's minds for a second, right? This transmits data.
It's crazy.
But what you're talking about there is something that's this big. It's tiny, right? What could this do?
Yeah.
If we knew how to use it right.
Okay, tell us about, what is that one?
So this is quartz crystal.
Okay.
And it's a Vogel cut.
Okay.
Marcel Vogel was the guy that developed it.
Just
And you can look him up. He's like the crystal guy.
Side note, crystals, it's just like with your diamonds, right? The clearer they are, then the more pure they are.
Okay.
So this one, it looks like glass because it's so clear. So also it's going to be more pure and theoretically more.
Any crystal that has color in it of any kind would be qualified as an impure quartz crystal. That doesn't mean it's bad, but all the pinks and the turquoises and the blues and the whites in a quartz, there's lots of different kinds of quartz crystal, right?
Yeah.
It's just an impurity in it, but a pure, clear as glass crystal is pure quartz. There's nothing else in it. Some interesting things. So she had mentioned glass, and you had brought up some of the religion stuff. I just want to segue into that a little bit because I think it's germane. So there's a long history of crystals in religious traditions all around the world. So the Christian religious tradition going back to Noah. So I don't know if you guys have read the Book of Enoch or any of the old stuff, but one of the things that was talked about is how the ark had light because it rained. It rained, right? It was always dark, right? Until the actual storm stopped. But in the books, it talks about a stone that Noah wore around his neck or that he would place around the boat. There's a few different texts that talk about it, right? But the stone emitted light, but it was ambient. It wasn't like this, right? Where the light's focused here. It was ambient. It was everywhere all at the same time, but it came from this crystal that he wore around his neck. So there was some kind of technology that they were aware of or understood prior to the flood that enabled them to create those types of things, right?
Well, what's the one? I'm really bad at my scriptures. I don't remember names, even with like movies and books, whatever. Anyway, the one where they were getting in the ship.
Yeah,
and
Brother Jared. So that's where I'm going next.
Okay.
Right? So if we try to be historical about this, right? So here's this guy that supposedly came from that same area where Noah landed.
Yeah.
Right? Very well may have known him.
Yeah.
If you're looking at the genealogies, right? He probably was aware of who this guy was. He at least knew his son Shem, for sure. The brother of Jared and his family, right? So Mahanrai probably knew these people, and they knew the technology, they knew all the secrets and the mysteries, right?
Yeah.
So they're gone and they're traveling, and they got across this huge body of water, and they don't know how they're going to have light. So he goes up and he's like, I don't know what to do. Well, you tell me what to do, right? The whole conversation with the Lord. Yeah. So in the book, it says that he made 16 stones that were clear as transparent glass. That's what the book says.
Crystal,
right?
This is a Book of Mormon.
This is the Book of Mormon. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the Ether 3, right? So or 4. Anyway, he made 16 stones. He made them. Right? Like if we step back for a second and think about that, he made 16 stones that were clear as transparent glass. And then he went to God and said, touch them now and they'll glow. Right? So that could possibly have been just him believing that God could do anything, or he could have had prior memory, right? I know this is how this works. I can do this. And then if you imbue it with your power, then it'll do these magical things, right? So he makes these 16 stones. God touches them, and now they're glowing, right? They're producing light in a way that nothing else did or could. And that's one of the running debates about crystals is there is technology that can cause them to glow, right? Modern technology, but there's this other side of it that is, well, the crystal can glow of itself. And the Essene community, back in the time of Jesus, was one of the communities that talked about this type of power. They had crystals that could emit light and energy. So there's that side. There's that story as well. Then there's the breastplate, right? Aaron's breastplate. Okay, what's in his breastplate? 12 crystals.
Which I didn't know. I didn't know that.
All crystals, different types of. Not all of them are carbon. So diamond is a carbon-based crystal, right? This is quartz. It's not the same. They're different bases. Okay, this is a silica base that's carbon-based. So anyway, he's got these 12 stones in his breastplate, and he's told to cut them in a very specific way. So they're flat on the top, but they're diamond pointed. So it'd be like if you cut this off and put it in, it's flat on this way, but the points are going in. So what does that mean?
The points are going in.
The points
so
are
it's
going
coming
in.
too.
It's receiving.
Yeah.
All of those stones are receiving information.
Yeah.
Right? Or it's data transfer, right? data transfer into his, and it's solar plexus too. It's all right here, which in the like esoteric spiritual circles, this is where God dwells here, right? Is in this center. Anyway, so he's got those, and he's got two other crystals right here, and that's how he communicates with gods.
Yeah.
He goes in the Holy of Holies, and he's got this whole thing of crystals around him so that he can communicate with the heavens, right? And then there's the Joseph Smith story, right?
Yeah.
He had a rock that was communicating information that he could see, and that's how the Borgum came about. And then there's the Hiram Page story, and then there's all kinds of stories of people finding stones. And we can go to Native Americans. So the Native Americans have a tradition of seeker rocks. That's probably not the right word, but their shamans would always carry around a bag on their hip, and it was full of stones. And those stones could do things, and they could find things. So similar to dowsing, people would come to the shamans, go, "My horse is gone, my cattle's lost. I can't. What's going on? Where's the hunt? Where are the braves? What's going on?" So they would put the stones on the table. They would say a little prayer or whatever, and they would vanish. They would disappear.
The stones would.
The stones would.
Okay.
Yeah. And then they'd come back at some future date, and they'd show up on the table. They'd show up on the couch. They would just show up somewhere, and then he would communicate with the rocks. And the rocks would tell him, "Oh yeah, the cow got out and it's down over by this water feature," or "The Braves will be here. They're at this pass right now. They'll be here at this time." And it was right. They were right many, 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 many times. So
what books are these kind of stories in?
So this particular one is about the Native Americans. It's in a book called The World We Used to Live In.
Okay.
And the writer talks about the ancient abilities of the Native American and their ability to connect to the earth and to talk to the earth and communicate with the winds and the energies and all those types of things, and the shamans and what they were able to do with their different tools and things. So
Yeah.
there's several books too that talk about it, but this particular story that I had in mind came from that one, The World We Used to Live In.
Okay.
So turquoise. Talk to me about turquoise, because you're talking Native Americans, and they're like everything is turquoise, right? So
Yeah.
what's
From
the
the
significance
books,
there?
it's not.
Do you know?
The turquoise wasn't. It's more ornamental.
Okay.
From what I've read. Now that obviously could be not all the information, but the rocks they would use, they would find after lightning storms. This is from that book too, right? They would be rocks. They would walk around plateaus after lightning storms, and they would find rocks that weren't buried, and it wasn't anything special, right? It wasn't like, oh, this is a glowing rock. It was just a rock that was setting on the dirt. It wasn't embedded in like the rest of the terrain. It was something that was just setting on top of stuff, and they would go collect them, and then they would test them, and some of them were more powerful than others. So it wasn't any particular rock that I'm aware of, or any particular type of rock. It was, they were looking for a specific placement of the rock after lightning storms.
Huh. Yeah, interesting.
That is
Like
interesting.
it's like Mother Earth is there
That's
presenting
what
it
I'm
to you,
saying.
like this is
Like
what you're
from the
taking.
gods.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the guys talked about how they would call to him. He would be riding his horse through the forest, and he could hear them. He could hear the rocks. So he would stop and just like wander through the forest and find, and there it is. There's this rock sitting on top of the dirt, not buried into it, and he'd pick it up and put it in his pouch. And he would collect these rocks that talked to him.
Huh.
So again, more of this other world where it's like, yeah, none of that's testable.
Yeah.
You can't measure that. You can't hook it up to a device and see if it's valid or real.
So
Yeah.
if they're talking to him, did he explain if it was like in a feeling, or if it was like a voice that he heard, or
So
something kind of like? You go ahead.
it was a lot in the head,
Okay.
right? They would communicate with them, and not all of them went into details, but some of them would actually talk to them,
Yeah.
like they were having a conversation with somebody else.
Wild.
Just talk to the rocks. So
Yeah.
there's the Mayas had rocks. The Chinese have rocks. There's a long tradition of stones in our history that is not really part of the way we live anymore, in communicating and connecting with the world around us by using this type of stuff. And there are some people who are gifted at it. They can do it. They come that way. They can do it, and others can't.
Yeah.
And I find it fascinating that there are some things that we as a species are more inclined to accept because it's our experience.
Yeah.
Even though there's a portion of something in that experience that speaks to other experiences, we don't accept these other experiences because they're not part of our tradition or our culture, right? Even though, like, if we started talking to people about, look, this technology you use, it's crystal technology, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but that's not the same thing as somebody being able to feel a crystal or being able to do it. It's like, well, your religious tradition says it is, and there's all kinds of other anecdotal evidence that that's a very real thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just an interesting side note on crystals.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to read the part above. So that says quartz crystals and electronics, what I read before. But then above that, it says crystals are used in a variety of ways in technology, including as a data storage medium and to maintain precision in electronic devices. 5D optical data storage. This experimental technology uses femtosecond laser to record digital data in nanostructured glass. The data is stored in 5 dimensions, including size, orientation, and 3D placement. The disks could store up to 360 terabytes of data and last for billions of years. This technology is also known as superhuman memory crystal. So this is on Google.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Data storage, right? And Marcel Vogel talks about how each of these facets this way is its own computer bank. So the more cuts you have on it, the more storage capacity you have.
Oh, okay.
To store information. Another interesting story about him, and you can pull him up right now. Actually, just Google it. So do Marcel Vogel, Marcel Vogel, Hedges Crystal Skull, Hedges Crystal Skull.
This is crazy.
So this is one of the most famous crystal skulls. Mitchell Hedges. I forgot his first name.
Is that the one?
Yeah, that's the one.
Just do images, or
yeah, you can
just click on it.
We'll go to his website.
There you go.
That's his, right?
Yeah, he's dead, but there are people who carry on his work. Go back and just go to images. So scroll up. Yeah, it's not showing the actual crystal skull, but that's Marcel Vogel.
Okay.
So that's the Vogel crystal. So anyway, the Hedges. So just do that. Just do the Hedges, Mitchell Hedges crystal skull, or just Hedges crystal skull.
Is this a better? I'll try this one since.
Has that picture there?
Does that look like it?
Yeah. While it's pulling up, I'll start telling the story. So Marcel Vogel became very well known in the crystal community for his innate abilities to work with and communicate with crystals. You know, all kinds of stuff with water and all kinds of stuff with power and electronics and some really fascinating things. But his real desire was to use them to heal people. So we started doing classes around the world showing how you could use crystals to heal our auras, to heal our energy, to heal our organs, to heal our minds and our relationships, and some really cool stuff. The daughter of Mitchell Hedges, the guy that found the Mitchell Hedges crystal, became aware of him and invited him. Would you like to come and see my crystal skull? So naturally, he goes up there and takes a look at it. So
this is one of those. I just did Hedges, you said, right? Marcel Vogel Hedges.
The other one wasn't coming up. Or what?
It wouldn't load.
let's do this one.
No, that was that same one.
Yeah, no, it's right here. This is the story. So I'll summarize this story.
Okay.
So he goes to this lady's house who has the crystal, and it's about this big. Okay, so it's not a big one, and not very many of them are big, but this one in particular was so unique because the jaw could detach. It was 100% crystal, but the jaw could detach, and it was perfectly carved. Right, it looked just like a human skull. So in process of seeing it, he asked the lady, like, do you want to go on a journey? And so he gets the crystal and he draws it in to his solar plexus area, and he's holding it basically like this. And then he does some breath work for a minute. And as he's doing the breath work, the crystal starts to glow and glows some more and glows some more. And then he asks the lady, he's like, you're going on a journey, right? So he tells her to look into its eyes. Okay.
No thanks.
Yeah, right. Hard pass. Yeah. All right. So look into its eyes, and as he does so, or as she does so, in their mind's eye, they're transported to this temple somewhere in Central America. It's a domed temple. There's a hole in the top, lights coming down, and on this pedestal on the ground is this crystal that is sitting there. And then in come an older gentleman and a younger gentleman dressed in white robes, shaven heads. They come up to the crystal. The younger one puts his right hand on the crystal, puts his left hand on the guy's head, and just waits there for a minute. And then that guy leaves, and then two young kids come in, a boy and a girl, same thing, all in white, so it's a priest class, right? They come in, both have shaved heads, and he puts his left hand on the crystal and his right hand on each of their heads. And what's communicated to them is this was their method of information transfer, so that the knowledge gained by the previous generations was handed down through this crystal. They could store all of their knowledge in the crystal, but then transfer it, right? So crystals store information, transfer information, and generate and transmit power, right?
Yeah.
They would also use the crystals for power sources and power structures, right? Then they were also given a whole bunch of information about how it was made, how it was cut, the technology they used to do it, which was nothing that we have today, and super fascinating, right? So they get done, and he has this experience with this lady, and it's really cool, right? So for me, just another example of, now he could have made it all up, right? Who knows? But this lady had this experience too, and she has a third-party account of it. He also went to Stonehenge, Marcel Vogel did, and had his own experience there, and it is his belief that Stonehenge is a library.
Oh, yeah.
He said these stones are filled with information. Filled with information. We just don't yet as a species know how to access it. And he's like, I'm not in a position to divulge what's in there.
But was he saying that he could get some of that information, or
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
But they're not crystals there, right? They're just regular stones.
I actually don't know what they're made of.
Yeah.
But there's crystalline properties in it.
Oh, okay.
In those rocks.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And to that point, he talks a lot about the nature of our creation, and that since we have silica in every cell of our body stores information, generates power, and transmits data. Every cell of our body. And a lot of that's based on our experience, but it's a lot of subtle energies, right? We're picking up on all this subtle energy all the time, all around us. And he talks a lot about the importance of our minds being the antenna for the cells in our system. So I used to teach this to kids, but if you had, like, pull up a picture of a cell, like just Google cell structure or something. In school, when we're taught about cells, we're often told that the brain of the cell is the nucleus, right? That's the brain of the cell. But in biology, the brain of the cell is actually the membrane. It's the outer wall. So, yeah, just pull up that one right there. Okay, perfect. So the cell wall is the membrane, and the membrane has all these antennae on the outside of the cell wall that are reading the environment all the time.
Is that what those little hair-like things are?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're examples of it, right? Okay. And there's antennas for specific vitamins and minerals, antenna for specific hormones and all kinds of things that the cell is looking for based on what the manufacturing plant on the inside requires to divide or to create different proteins or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so everything on the outside of the cell is the environment the cell lives in, and it's picking up on all the different energy that exists around that cell all the time, right? So these little antennae are always buzzing, and when they feel stuff or read stuff, then they respond to those buzzers with instructions inside the cell, and they tell the nucleus, do this, do this, do this, all these things, do that and the other, right? And he is huge on this being a metaphor for our lives. Yeah. Where our physical and energetic makeup, because our energy body works the same way, right? We receive a signal, and the energy body responds based on our perception of what is actually happening. And that energy body can start to break down and weaken based on traumatic experiences that we've had or beliefs that we had or whatever, right? And it starts to break down, and that breakdown then manifests in the physical because of the way it's engineered. I don't know how that works, right? Yeah. I don't know what that interface is, but Marcel Vogel's point is your mind, not the physical brain, but your mind is the thing that dictates how these cells operate, because they're always looking at the environment, and because there's silica in everything, it's always reading information, it's always storing information, it's always transmitting energy. The energy isn't necessarily good.
Yeah.
Because you can imbue these things with some pretty dark stuff, right? There's actually some artistic work of Jesus having a wand and doing his magic, right? There's depictions of him having a staff with a little crystal thing up at the top too.
Yeah.
In ancient Jewish tradition, the staff of Adam was a very powerful tool that was used pre-antediluvian to do magical works. It was a rod, kind of like the Harry Potter wands that had it's got phoenix feather inside it, or whatever, right? But there's a lot of lore around ancient stuff that's crystal based.
Where's the silica in the cell?
It's in and throughout. It's in very small amounts.
Yeah,
but every cell has it inside.
They've identified that scientifically and everything.
Yeah, you can look it up.
So where I heard about this the first time was, and I have a little bit of, I actually really like him, but I have a little bit of a hard time, I guess, understanding everything, number one, and maybe that's the biggest part of it. But with Billy Carson talking about how our cells hold, how much data did he say? And maybe you were,
I don't know.
It was like
it's a lot.
A lot of data can be stored in one cell. And then he related it somehow of how it related with how old we are as a species. And I wish I could remember how he said it. Yeah. But it holds each cell holds so much data. So that's where he's getting that from then, because
I don't know where he's getting it from. Yeah. This is just what Marcel Vogel says about the nature of our creation and how silica works in our bodies from a crystalline standpoint. Yeah. Another thing too is our pineal gland, right in the back of the brain. So look up.
Is it pineal? Is it in the back?
It's in the back.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The pituitary's in the front. So you have your midbrain, right? Pituitary's in the front. So look up a cross section of the brain. Okay, that one's fine. So, yeah. Okay, so your pituitary's up in the front here, and your pineal's back over here.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and you have your corpus callosum, and you have all these other things going on inside there, right? So this image, if we go now and actually, we'll leave that up here for a second. Let me pull this up real fast. And I may have said this to you already, but.
Okay.
Okay, so you have the pituitary gland, the eye of God is the pineal gland, and you have your brainstem, and you have your corpus callosum, right? It's the exact layout of the midbrain, the inside brain.
Yeah. Right. What's that eye called?
It's the Eye of Horus.
Eye of Horus. Okay. Yeah. Who is Horus? Or where did this come
Egyptian
from?
gods. Eye of Ra, Eye of Horus. The left eye, I always mix them up. Left eye is, I think, the Eye of Horus, and the right eye is the Eye of Ra.
Okay.
But they're symbols of power. And what's interesting is in the Book of Abraham, the facsimile, Joseph Smith identifies that symbol as the priesthood. Huh. Mm. So in physical terms, when we look at the midbrain, the pineal gland has crystals in it, little tiny microscopic crystals. And those crystals, according to some people, can be activated through movement of the cerebral spinal fluid. So the cerebral spinal fluid is all around the outside of the brain, all this yellow stuff, but then there are ventricles up inside here where the cerebral spinal fluid flows, and then it flows all the way down, but it goes further than your vertebra. So you have 32 vertebrae, and then you have your sacrum, and your spinal cord ends, I think, at L5. It doesn't continue to go on. It breaks out, and you have your sacrum, and you have all these nerves that come out from your sacrum, and it's not the spinal cord anymore, right? But the cerebral spinal fluid continues down into the sacrum, and there's a sac of cerebral spinal fluid in your sacrum. And
that's at the lower part of your...
Yeah, it's the base. So you have your butt cheeks right in the right in the middle.
Right there.
That's the sacrum.
Okay, yeah.
So there's a sac at the bottom of that, and that acts as a pump. And through specific breath techniques, you can move the cerebral spinal fluid up and down, and it activates the pineal gland because it exerts pressure on it.
Okay.
Right? So you breathe in certain ways, and it pressurizes your spinal fluid, and that pressurization puts pressure on the pineal gland. And what happens when you pressurize a crystal? It generates power, right? They're
So this
piezoelectric.
Is this why breath work is becoming so popular nowadays, and people are claiming to have
I don't
psychedelic
know.
experiences
Yeah.
during meditation and all that stuff? Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
And
I've heard a
done-
bunch about it. I don't know how much everybody else has, but I've heard people are hosting like breathwork classes.
Breathwork
It's
classes.
become like a big thing in the past couple years.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I've done years and years and years and years and years and years and years of breath work, and this is stuff I've been aware of for a very long time. And it may just be the crystal thing or the dowsing rods thing for me, but I've attempted all of this related like new age
Yeah.
enlightenment thing from inside the midbrain, and I have not found any kind of real results from it. There's some very interesting science being done around it. There's a lot of people who are studying the cerebral spinal fluid itself, how it's created. Like they're going to the beginning of creation when conception happens, and they watch the creation of that zygote, and then they watch what happens to it as it begins to unfold.
Yeah.
The very first thing that gets created is the cerebral spinal fluid, or
Oh, really?
cerebral spinal fluid, and then the spinal column. It bends over on itself and creates that gap, and then it's filled with a lot of the amniotic fluid, original base stuff that carries a lot of information with it, right? And there's a whole bunch of stuff. I won't go down that road, but
Yeah.
from a crystalline standpoint, there are just some very interesting anecdotal things related to the nature of our creation and how crystal can help to evolve us, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Turn us into higher level beings, and not only internally but also externally, to actually use them to improve our lives, to improve the lives of others, not only technologically, right? So we don't have to rely on power from the wall,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Power comes inherently in the thing that we're using, but then also we can heal each other and we can connect with each other in deeper and more meaningful ways.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the, sorry if I'm skipping around too much here, but I remember hearing Billy Carson also talk about what was the thing you mentioned earlier? In Egypt, they had why do I always forget the name of this freaking thing? Where power was generated.
Oh, the pyramids?
Well, the pyramids,
Obelisks?
what's like the case that they thought, this is
Oh, the sarcophagus.
what was the case you mentioned it earlier? The Ark in the Covenant. Thank you.
Oh yeah,
Nailed
okay,
it.
yeah, okay.
That it was basically a he thinks that it was something used for power and power generation and everything, but that hasn't been confirmed officially.
Not necessarily confirmed officially, but the box in the king's chamber
Yes.
is the exact dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant.
Okay, so they think that's where it was stored.
One of them. There are two arks.
That's right. There are two. Okay.
Yeah, there are two arks. There's the one that they carried out in front of them to, announce the host of Israel, and there was another ark too.
Okay.
And
Do you think they both had to do with power, or what did the book say? We don't have to say we commit to any.
yeah, I have no idea.
Okay.
There are people who believe that the Great Pyramid of Giza was a ramp pump. I don't know if you know what a ramp pump is. So you can look this up when we're gone too. But a ramp pump is a water system. So it's indisputable that the pyramid was flooded with water.
Yeah.
It's all over, especially in that grotto chamber, right? So it's also indisputable now too that the pyramid used to be surrounded by a wall that was filled up with water. There was a moat around it, right?
Yeah.
At that entrance level, the water would fill up and it would go down that horizontal or angled shaft and go into the grotto area. And there's a huge block that blocks the entrance to that grotto, but it could slide. So what would happen is the water would go in and would create suction, and it would go boom, boom. So if you look up a ramp pump, that's what it does. The water comes in and it creates exerted pressure, and it pulls something up. The rock comes back, water goes down and slams, and it pumps.
Okay.
Like people build ramp pumps today to push water from lower elevations to higher elevations.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So, but what's interesting is you look at the grotto, and people have gone in and analyzed it, and there's two nodes on the sides of the grotto. And when water would come in, they've analyzed it, and water would come in, it would swirl in very specific patterns, and it would hydrolyze the water. So it'd separate the hydrogen from the water, and the hydrogen would go up. There's a small shaft from the grotto. There's a small shaft from the grotto that goes right up to the queen's chamber. So now this is where theory comes in, right? Because you can't test this, but there's very clear that water was in the grotto area. Anyway, hydrogen would go up as a gas into the Queen's chamber, and it would, that whole chamber is resonant. The Queen's chamber is. And
what do you mean by resonant? Sorry.
If you go look at it, it's shaped in a very specific way.
Oh, okay.
And that it was attuned to a specific resonance.
Oh, okay. Like a frequency.
Frequency.
Or okay, got it.
Anyway, the hydrogen would go up, it would ignite, get up to the King's chamber, and it would produce this energy connected to the ark that was in there. And then that energy was transferred to the obelisks around Egypt and would produce power and light.
Huh. Yeah, fascinating. And that's why
true or not, I don't know, but
yeah. Well, I think he was trying to make a case of why everybody wanted it, or why there was, I don't know all the history behind it all. That's why I think I don't know what books to start with, dude. I'm like, I bought one of his, and then but he's always trying to sell something too, and then he has his trips to the pyramids, and I'm like, I like a lot of what he says resonates a lot with me, but I'm like, what books am I missing to get caught up to understand the basics?
The best thing to do is read people's bibliographies.
Really?
Yep, that's what I did.
Okay.
You find something you're interested in and read it, and then you go look at the bibliography. Oh, that looks interesting, and you read that one, and then go read some other in the bibliography.
Okay.
You end up just going into all these subjects and all this information that ends up coming back. It's kind of like an hourglass thing, right? You've got all this information down at the bottom, and it slowly comes up, and you get to this point where it's like you either think you know everything, or you're going to have a breakdown, right? Yeah. Because it's like, it doesn't. What's going on? All this stuff, right? And then you'll have this moment of clarity, and it'll all click. And everything that you've just reviewed and gone through over the last however long you've been doing stuff, it clicks and it makes sense.
Yeah.
And now there's this new vista that's open. So now you're at the bottom of a new hourglass.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you do it again. Right. You do it again. And
Crazy.
It's like this endless journey of information.
Yeah.
And it's hard too because a lot of it is just information.
Yeah.
For me personally, I have no way of verifying truth.
Sure.
For myself. So you should read a lot. But anyway, there's
cool. Crazy. That's cool.
Yeah, it is. It's way cool stuff. I went down. We had talked right around the same time. I think I heard who's the actor that was just on Rogan that we were talking about. That
Terrence Howard.
Yes. And then he did another podcast with Eric Weinstein and Joe Rogan. Did you listen to that one? It was pretty interesting. Weinstein was really quick to try and straighten him out, which was kind of fascinating to watch. But he was also pretty good about giving him like, hey, you're onto something here. Is it Flower?
Yeah, it's Flower of Life.
Flower of Life. That's what I was going to call it. So the Flower of Life. I think that's the part that Terrence Howard says that he got from essentially an angel gave him that information.
Yep.
And Weinstein, if I remember right, was kind of telling him this. He's like, you may have something here, but you need to be careful on how you go about this because you're not a scientist, you're not a mathematician, you don't understand
that dichotomy explained at the very beginning, right? It's science rules, so you cannot claim something that cannot be measured and tested by our technology, by our systems.
Yeah,
and it's like that's so limiting to who we are as creatures, as creative beings, and whatever our creation is. Like I have to trust like this.
Yeah.
I'm an organic nuclear generator that has way more to me than just tin and circuits and wires.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's challenging.
Anyway, yeah, it's pretty interesting. I'm curious to see what they come up with over the next several years with all of that. But anyway, I think we're in for. I think yesterday I was listening to a podcast with it was on Ed Milet. This guy, do you know the name of the guy that's in all the anti-aging stuff?
No.
But this is kind of chasing a bunny trail here. But
Eden's good at that lately. He'll start on a trail and then he'll be like, Kyle, what do you know? Kyle, what do you know about this? And then Kyle will send him all sorts of stuff.
I kind of got thinking about it because you were mentioning stuff about just the cells, and I was listening to this anti-aging podcast. It was Ed Milet. The guy has been on. I'm going to tell you because he talked about how they're growing these tiny brains in labs, and they're giving them dementia, they're aging them, and then they're bringing them back.
Wild.
Like it's happening. I think he said they started with. I think they were doing rats. I wanted to say for a minute I thought human, but I don't know that's right. And then he talked about how they're already starting to cure like blindness And he says for every year we live right now, we're adding 3 months onto life, and eventually we'll get to the point where we start to anti-age, where we're going to reverse it backwards.
Interesting.
His name is on my phone over there. Where do I see that I'm?
Your shows. Go to your show.
Right here.
Oh, did you get it?
Oh, it must have been was it an old one? Oh, yeah, here.
Right there.
David Sinclair. Have you heard of him?
Yeah.
So he was the one that was on there talking about it. And I'm pretty sure he said, I can take one of your skin cells. He's like, I can't do it because it's illegal. I can take one of your skin cells, convert it into sperm somehow, fertilize an egg, and basically clone you. Right now, this is the science that they have. And then he talked about CRISPR and how they can get into the genes. And he's like, your DNA is just a code. And we get in and we can adjust things, which kind of gets into a whole other type of science and spirituality.
You've heard of the company that is wanting to grow humans now.
So I've read that they have like actual brains running. I didn't read into it too much, so I shouldn't talk about it, I guess. But I don't know.
I'll send you the link.
Okay.
So there's a company that wants to grow humans, like from the beginning. Like they conceive them and all the stuff. So
Why?
because now you have a
Backup body parts and
you
organs.
have people. So the island.
Yeah.
Have you seen that movie?
No, but
No,
I
it's
could see
so
where it's
real.
going.
Yeah, but you have, for the first time in the history of the world, you have human beings that are literally owned by corporations. Property, not because of some theory of slaves or not, right? It's like I can dominate you so I can own you. It's no, I created it.
Yeah.
Whereas before that, it's two human beings that create another human being. But now there's a corporation that's able to use this type of stuff to create human life through the use of other human life, right? So they're not doing it from scratch.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But they're using human life to create human life from scratch, and they now own those beings. They own them. So it begs a whole lot of questions about human rights and
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
God-given rights, and about how do you control any kind of appropriateness about these people that are owned by a corporation.
Yeah, it's like another level of when are you a human?
Uh-huh. And
You know.
what is life?
Yeah.
Shut it down.
It's-
Shut it down now.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know where the whole AI and technology and where things are going, and that David Sinclair seems to have he seems well intentioned, you know.
Yeah.
You just never know, like,
They all do.
really any of it and where the core of the heart of all of this is. And he talked about how they have big investors and they have a lot of money behind this. And I think he even named Amazon. What's his name?
Bezos.
I think he mentioned him. But anyway, there's a bunch of these just like billionaire guys that are like, yeah, you guys are clearly onto something here. Like, let's see where this goes. And
Which
And
is
that's
obviously
sometimes
scary.
where it goes bad is the
Yeah,
investors because they're the
right.
ones who control it.
yeah.
They're like, oh, cool, you got this far. Okay, now.
And I could be wrong. I thought he mentioned him. I thought he named a couple people, but yeah, exactly. That's where it gets scary. It's like, oh, it would be nice to not have my eyes age, and it would. But then you kind of get into like the Gigi Young stuff where she talks about like, at what point are you? I think death is a part of the cycle of life, like of
Sure.
you know. And so if we're just continually changing who we are and evolving into something else, who
One of
are
the
we?
theories of aliens is that they've literally done that to themselves.
You just showed me that.
What?
Wait, was it one of the things that you sent?
I don't know, but
Oh yeah.
Where did I see it? Where it was like-
Gigi Young talks about that, right? How the Greys
they've
essentially
cloned themselves so
that
much.
dude.
that they've turned into what they are now.
Yeah.
So they were once us, but now they're living as that.
Yeah.
And then there's also like, I don't know how it all ties together, but I was listening to Tucker Carlson on Rogan not too long ago, and he talked about how he thinks there's a real spiritual component to the whole alien thing, which was pretty fascinating. And it resonated, but I'm still trying to figure out why.
That guy that you're just listening to, that you've been listening to, he's like channeling who?
Oh, yeah, the Bashar guy I asked you about. That's another real thing. That's another Instagram reel, so you can look him up. But there's this guy that claims to channel this being who I actually watched one this morning where it said he's a hybrid of like us and something else, where he said, this is who I am, and we're related, and this is how. So it kind of goes along
That's
with what
what
you
I
just
was-
said. Yeah.
Yeah.
I sent it to her this morning, and I'm like, this guy claims to channel it. The people ask him questions, and And if you want to say anything about it, you can. I don't know if you.
I
Had you heard of him before?
The Bashar?
Yeah, the guy that.
Yeah, I've heard of that entity.
Yeah.
And that's something that it's so freaking scary.
I was just gonna say it freaks me out.
Yeah, it's so freaking scary because I think it's real.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's very real. Very, 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 very real. And one of the things that I would really love is to know and understand how to detect it and or have the same thing on the other side. Right? So
yeah.
Another short story. Old texts, right? There's some old books out there, but one of them talks about Enoch prior to Zion being created and all this stuff, right? So he gets called as a prophet and whatever. And at the same time, if you remember the stories, there's this dark side that's being built up at the very same time as the light side's being built up, right? They end up having this huge spiritual war and stuff, and Enoch's told to go tell him to repent and whatever, right? So this is all the Watchers, right? The Watchers have come down and they've taught the children of men how to use roots and incantations and spells and witchcraft and sorcery and stuff that I think is real, right? Even to the point where you have transmuting people, like they turn into other creatures and they can transmorph into stuff. And this is where vampires and werewolves come from. Anyway, so all this dark stuff is happening. So he goes, and as he's going, they're all trying to attack him and stuff, but he's surrounded by fire and light. They literally can't come close to him, right? So he goes and he walks down and goes into the center building, and as he's walking through the center building, it's just darkness everywhere. There's all these demons, whatever, and he goes up to this dude that's sitting up in the main chair, and they start having this conversation, and eventually Enoch stops talking to the guy, and he starts talking to the being that's next to him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the guy goes, "Oh, you can see him?" He's like, "Yeah, I can see him.
Wow.
I know what's going on here." And he starts having a conversation with the beings, but specifically one with the beings that are behind this physical person.
Interesting.
Right? And they have this conversation, and then the being, whatever. Anyway.
Yeah.
The conversation's long and whatever, but to me, I don't know how to say this gently, but survival on this planet, I believe, is going to come down to human beings being able to fully understand the spiritual nature of our creation and experience it in a controlled way.
Huh.
We have to know what is going on outside of our physical senses.
Yeah.
And be able to be very clear about what's real and what's not real. What's from our minds, what's from our historical experiences, what is from all these other entities that are out there, and what's from the good, right?
Yeah.
And not only being able to communicate with them, but then also to have within us that charged, enlightened spiritual power that can keep that stuff at bay, but also to create places of peace where, and by peace, I don't mean like it's this flowery, rosy, it's all nice. It's like, no, it's peaceful because we have enough power to keep the dark at bay.
Yeah.
And we know what the rules are in that community for maintaining peace within. Because a lot of times it falls apart from within, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's my opinion. I don't think technology is going to save us. I don't think advancements in even crystal technology or anything like that will preserve humanity from all this AI stuff and all this transhumanism stuff and whatever is going on with the alien thing, like whatever that is. Like Nathan Reynolds is like, these aren't necessarily aliens, but these are creatures that have been here for a very long time.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily from outer space, extraterrestrial, but they've been here for a very long time, and they have their technology and they have their stuff and whatever, right? So it's like whatever that is, whatever's going on with these other creatures, these other beings that are here and are apparently showing themselves, and some of it's corporate related. It's not necessarily these beings. Anyway,
yeah,
I think that we have to figure out how to transcend all of that spiritually.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
that makes sense to me.
That's really where the power is. The power is not in technology. The power is in the evolution of us as a species, as a human being, to where we are the light, we are the intelligence. We can go through all the different levels and dimensions of existence and exist in them and know them and understand the rules. So this is more Joseph Smith, but he talked a lot about how if the elders of Israel ever overcome, they have to understand the rules that govern the spiritual realm. That's a very interesting phrase. Right?
Yeah.
Regardless of what people think about it, I think that concept is right. Like, we are spiritual beings, and spiritual isn't necessarily theological or religious, right? We are more than just the flesh, and so we got to figure out what that is and how to master it. How to be masters of our creation. So we're not duped. We have power over this technology that's, I think, soon going to enslave us. And
it feels like it is already.
I was going to say,
we're all tied in.
already.
We're all part of our phone and our iPad.
Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk, right? He's like, we're already cyborgs.
Yeah.
Like, what the next step is a logical step, right? We're already connected to the hip to all this technology. To have it implanted in us is a natural, logical next step. Like, what's the problem here?
Right.
But
we're already doing it.
But at what point are we done playing God? Like, we're creating other humans. We're putting chips in ourselves so that we are certain ways. Like, that's where it all is scary to me.
Yeah.
It's cool, though.
It's cool. It certainly is cool. What they can do.
It's cool. It's kind of cool to research.
I don't know, quantum computers and nanotechnology. And unfortunately, the history of the world says that inventions and technology are used by the powerful to control everybody else. That's how it is, right? Whether it was roads for Rome, right? They controlled the world with their technology, not for the good of other people. Right?
Yeah.
Same thing in China with gunpowder. Like, anything that's ever been invented that is a source of power has never been used to the benefit of the population.
Yeah.
Ever. It's always been used by those who have it to control everybody else. Yeah. So unless we have a benign oligarchy right now, then I think we're in for some pretty terrible stuff. Unless we can overcome it spiritually.
Yay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Is there goodness and light or anything good to look forward to, Kyle, to help us?
Well, I think to his point, like what he was saying, he's like, but we have to do the work. And we have to be the ones that are like not buying into all of the crazy and all the new I mean, it's pretty cool and exciting, but really it comes back down to our spirits and figuring out, okay, what are we supposed to be doing here, and working hard at making sure we're as well off as we can be here.
Yeah.
Not here.
I like it. Well summarized. Thank you.
It scares me so much.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how to answer your question.
Yeah.
It's hard to find that light in the world we live in. It is for me. I'll speak for me. It's hard for me to find that light because I don't see it. I look all the time like where could I go? Like, where could I take my family where we could not be a part of this, but also not, turn into dust eaters. Yeah. Right? It's like, to me that's not life either.
Dust
right?
eaters.
I don't want to live my entire life just trying to survive.
Yeah.
Because that's not existence either.
What's fear?
I'm going to pee my pants. I'm so sorry. Should we pause this or do
Well, we should probably finish
We can probably finish up. It's 2 hours
But yeah.
right now.
We're in.
But
Okay,
I'll say this, though.
Goes
I'll
so
say
fast.
this. I do feel like the potential for obtaining the light that's required to overcome the darkness is inherent within us. We have been so deeply entrenched in the philosophy of those who are in control that it is very difficult to get to that light. Because there's so many things that come in that say, well, that can't be real, or that can't be true, or you shouldn't be doing that, or you shouldn't be doing that. Our sources of authority and our sources of influence that we have as a species, right, been acculturated to say, this is where I should go to find information or go to find truth or whatever it is, right? There's so much of that just gets in the way of just being quiet inside without having all of those external things. I think the potential is there. That's why I said potential.
Yeah.
I, for myself, even with the experiences I shared last week with my own journey, whatever it wasn't because I was doing anything, right? Like I said, I wasn't in any special form. I hadn't come back from Tibet because I'd been there for 8 years training to be a monk, whatever. And now it's just stuff happened to me, right? Yeah. But I don't know how to activate any kind of spiritual connection for myself. I think the potential is there, but I know for myself, there are a lot of distractions that get in the way of any kind of consistent and true connection with whatever divinity is. So
There's a lot of noise. It's hard to find quiet places, I guess, or quietness, right?
yeah, well, it's really getting the noise out of you.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
It's in us. It's our traditions. It's the way we think. It's the way we believe. It's what we believe. It's why we believe what we believe. It's why we do what we do. It's all the stuff that's in us that's got to get like peeled away. Like, oh, okay, and that's painful and hard. It's like, this is how I grew up, or this is what I was taught, or this is whatever, right? Peeling all that away until this is what I learned from being pruned, right? It's like peel it all away. It's like, wow, there was a lot of stuff that was just like baked into me that I never really thought through. So that's what I meant. Getting rid of all of that internal noise so that then more direct communication can be had.
Put the phone away, sit quietly, go for a drive, go for a walk.
Think about why you believe what you believe.
Yes. Even write it out or write it down.
Think about
Those are
why
some
you
thoughts
feel
I've had
how you
lately.
feel.
Yes. Jordan Peterson talks about that, writing things out, getting clear on your thoughts. I think that's half my problem is I listen to so much and that I don't take a minute to just like journal what I think about it. Or last week I took a note of this, but Stephen Pressfield has a book called The War of Art, I think is what it's called. And he talks about accessing the muse, and a lot of the challenge is just like sitting down to do something. And then I think he relates the muse to like the gods, but then that's also where he's like, when I sit down to write something, I don't always know where it's going to go, but then the muse, where does that thought, where does that creativity, where does that come from? And I think that's part of at least how maybe we access some of that.
Last thing, then I'll shut up. So
no, you're good. I might wet my pants.
Yeah. So
can I hit pause and come back?
Yeah.
I can't even think right now. I literally.
It's a weird feeling.
I'm so sorry.
Do you want me to pause it here?
Yeah. So you can go. You can have it on the recording.
I want to hear it.
One of the things that was
I'm so
really
sorry.
valuable for me was starting to.
Why do I have such a small bladder?
Okay.
Because he's probably ready to go too.
Well, no, it's just like 10 seconds. And so, you want to pause it? I guess we'll wait. There's something called the selfish ledger that Google put out.
Trust it.
The selfish ledger. So it's this idea that all the information we have inside us is not us. We are carriers. We are hosts for the information. And that the information can be called a ledger. That ledger is then transferred from generation to generation, and the ledger expands. But we are not the ledger. The ledger is something else. And that ledger can then be directed through experiences and through information. So Google's AI and Google in general has been talking about this idea of the selfish ledger to the point where they can manipulate the behaviors of populations towards a specific goal. So now you have on your phone, right, where it's like, what do I want to accomplish? And it'll give you all of these suggestions, right? And the closer that it can, not for you, that's the other thing. It's not you. It's your information. It's the ledger inside you, right? Because all of our interactions with the web create all these data points about who we are and what we like and what we're about. Even if it really isn't, right? We're just kind of participating in something that creates this ledger, and then the ledger exists independently of the human being, but the AI can say, this is what this person wants to accomplish. Here's the goal. And if there's nothing out there that can accomplish that goal, it'll generate one and then suggest it. So it's this art of suggestion all the time,
It's kind of like they said, that our feeds are, what's the word? Yeah, it's like an algorithm, and it's feeding you the information that you want, right? So it's not.
Well, it's feeding the information it thinks you want.
Yeah.
Right? It may not be what we really want. It's really what it thinks that we may want because of our ledger.
Yeah.
And that's how we become robots, because now we're not an independently thinking human being. It is this
Run away from me. Make
we
it
could call it
stop.
artificial intelligence, or we could call it super intelligence, because it's not necessarily computers anymore. It's something else that's controlling it. But
Yeah.
one thing that really helped me in so far as what we were talking about with eliminating all the inside stuff, this comes from Nietzsche. I don't know if you've read Nietzsche.
A little bit. I think I have a book upstairs.
Nietzsche was obsessed
Probably.
with this idea of psychological prejudices, and he would really, really give other philosophers a hard time because everything that they did, they would try to justify with the ends they've already created. Right? It wasn't true intellectual honesty. It was, yeah, here's my theory, but I'm just trying to make sure it matches up with my already concluded position.
Yeah.
Right?
Gotcha.
And he's like, no, that's a psychological prejudice. You're not actually thinking through the thing. You're just doing it from this position that you've already concluded on, right? So he had this list of psychological prejudices that he would just rip on people with. But one of the things that he was very, very, very adamant about is making sure that the decisions you make are yours, which can seem very simple, but you start to peel that back. And the way I took that was, anytime that I'm just driving down the road, this is how I used it because of my commute to work, right? This is kind of how I started. So commuting back and forth to work, when a thought would show up, I'd go, where did that come from? Right? Not necessarily to identify the source, but it was like, is that me? Like, do I really think that? Is that really me that's thinking that? And in some cases, it would be this negative thought about another person, right? It was like, I don't really think that. Like, I don't really think that, but it was presented to my mind. And I became more and more aware of things that were presented that I did not identify with. And whether, I mean, we can say it's the adversary or the devil or his minions or whatever, or our lizard brain, whatever it is. In the end, it didn't matter. What mattered was that I made my own choices with the information that I had. Right. So it took a lot of work to really start to think through it all. Okay, was that me? Was that me? Or is that really what I think? Do I really think that? No, I don't think that at all. I don't even know where that came from. Right. But what I found was that in the past, I would consistently behave based on some of those suggestions unconsciously. I didn't even know that I was behaving in ways that I did not think through. It was just because something was suggested to my mind. And it happened to coincide or align with some principles that I did have, but it would like skew it, right, a little bit. And maybe it wasn't even bad. It wouldn't necessarily skew it. It just wasn't authentic. It wasn't something that I had decided. And even if the information is presented, you still have to choose to accept it or not, right? It's not like, okay, here's your algorithm. You have to follow this thread now, right? And it's like, I can choose not to do this. Same thing, right? The thought comes in, you choose not to do it. But for me, that was a huge step forward in eliminating that internal noise of identifying this is who I am and what I think, to the disregard of all the other suggestions that come into my mind and heart, so that I know that I'm being authentically me in every moment that I possibly can.
I love that.
Anyway, that was it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's hard.
It's very hard.
Because you come unconsciously you're continually being programmed, right? And unconsciously to those around you too. Mm-hmm. So crazy. Good job. That's awesome of you to be able to.
Oh, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, but that you're aware and trying to continually check back in, you know.
Yeah.
And what's the thought behind the thought? Behind the thought, and where did that come from? And
then I just crawl into a hole, and I'm like, okay.
Time for now.
I'm so tired.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that, man. Sorry, I had to take a potty break.
That's good.
It's the downside of trying to stay hydrated in my old age.
Yeah, you guys can go watch the Selfish Ledger video now.
Yay!
Sweet. Get our popcorn ready?
It's only 5 minutes.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
All right, well, send us more stuff. It's Sunday. We got more
video.
stuff to do today.
Just Google it. The Selfish Ledger. It's just a video.
Okay, cool.
And it goes through that philosophy of you are not in charge.
Yeah. Interesting.
We are going to suggest who you should become.
Yeah.
So. Anyway.
We are like computers.
I know.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks
awesome.
for
Kim, did you have anything to add to that?
I'm good.
You sure?
Yeah.
All right. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Yep.